All right, thank you. Our next panel is Brightline West Breaking Ground. And it's my privilege to introduce the panelists to you. First, I'd like to welcome back the moderator, Janice Pettit. Janice is a supervising producer at CNBC. She's responsible for overseeing technology, transportation, and business issues. Her team produces documentaries on a variety of topics, including infrastructure, electric vehicles, climate tech, retail space, and mining. She's also the director of a program called CNBC Charge, which explores the growing electric vehicle industry. Prior to joining CNBC, she was a producer at Bloomberg. She holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Colorado and a master's in journalism from Northwestern. So please welcome Janice. And next, it's my privilege to introduce my friend and client, Mike Reininger from Brightline Holdings. Mike is the CEO of Brightline Holdings, which is the parent company of Brightline Florida and Brightline West. They are the only privately owned provider of passenger rail service in America. From 2012 to 2018, Mike was at Brightline, where he led the efforts to launch the first phase of the Florida project between Miami and Palm Beach. After a brief respite pursuing other things, he returned in 2021 to oversee the expansion to Orlando and eventually to Tampa, as well as the development of Brightline West. During my remarks this morning, when we were doing the year in review, you noticed a couple of very important milestones that were achieved by Brightline over the past year. It was the leadership of Mike and his team at Brightline that made those accomplishments possible. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to our panelists.
When we invest in infrastructure, we're really investing in opportunity. These are investments that will build a better America. We have a huge opportunity here to provide fast, safe, reliable, clean transportation in this country.
If you make the right kind of public investments, then private investments will follow. This work is creating hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs at the local level.
Imagine faster and more regular trips between Los Angeles and Las Vegas. Now we're finally getting it done.
Introducing Brightline West, America's first true high-speed train that's ushering in a new era of modern travel. From the lights of Las Vegas to the beaches of Southern California, Brightline West will connect two of the world's most iconic destinations in just 2 hours by soaring at 200 miles per hour. Brightline zero-emission, all-electric trains will be the greenest form of transportation in the world, and will be made right here in the USA with American labor. From beautiful stations with bright lounges and premium amenities, to an exceptional onboard experience with all the extras, Brightline West will offer a convenient and comfortable way to work, relax, and play. Welcome to the ride reimagined. Welcome to Brightline West.
A nice intro to Brightline West there. But let's actually start with Brightline Florida. Could you give us a little background of the projects, how it has expanded there, and yeah, tell us a bit about how that's going in Florida.
Sure. Thanks, Janice. Good to be with you all, by the way, today.
Oh, maybe the battery's low.
There we go. How's that? Better now? How many people in this room have now ridden a Brightline train?
Oh, nice.
So it's been that kind of year. I was here last year, and I asked the same question, And this is a room full of as supportive aficionados of what we do for a living as you could possibly find, probably anywhere in the country. And when I asked that question, less than a quarter of the room raised their hand. Here we are a year later, and virtually everybody in the room raised their hand, and it's been that kind of year. And it's an overnight sensation, a decade in the making. So we actually started Brightline, Florida, in 2012, in a little conference room with a handful of people and a piece of paper, and it was just an idea, and we were widely, viewed as pretty crazy about the attempt. And progressively, since then, we've made stride after stride. In the last year, we actually completed the fulfillment of the original idea, which was to connect Orlando to Miami with a new passenger rail system. And the end of last September, we ran the first trains from Miami to Orlando. We've been at that now for, I guess we're in our 8th month now, and we are now carrying north of 250,000 passengers a month, every month, on that line. So it's been a remarkable transformation. It has been, a series of progressive wins along the way, and we've finally gotten to the place that we're actually sort of in the vernacular in the state of Florida, and people actually think about taking a train as a viable alternative to the ways they normally would have done it, which is get in their car or seldom get in an airplane to go between Orlando and Miami. And those are important steps, for the future of the industry in total, but certainly very important steps for us as a company.
What's the next phase for Florida for expansion?
So we recently announced the development of a new station in Stuart, Florida, which is underway, and it'll take us a little while to get that up and operational. We have begun the pursuit of another station in Cocoa, in Brevard County in Florida. And we have been engaged for a little while now in the next big thing, which is to go from the Orlando International Airport to downtown Tampa. And at that point, we will connect basically 75% of the third largest state in the country with close proximity and accessibility to a high-speed rail system. So that's the big frontier that we're working hard on in Florida.
What were some challenges you faced in Florida, and what lessons were learned?
It should be of no surprise that when you do something pretty much for the first time, you can't predict the things that you can't predict, and you're going to run into all of them along the way. We had some normal things, that go along with any kind of construction program, that you have to deal with. We had the pleasure of, COVID interruption and supply chain breakdowns and those sorts of things in the midst of, a massive infrastructure, program. It taught us interesting lessons about how to be creative during the construction process and find other ways. I mean, that's the sort of overarching learning is, there's always another way, and you just have to keep finding the other way, and you just don't accept the no, for an answer. The guy that I work for is fond of saying that in order to make these kind of things happen, it just takes one no to break the whole chain, and you got to get everybody to say yes every time. So that's the nature of the challenge, is you have to keep finding ways to get to yes for everybody, because it doesn't take but one no to break the chain.
So let's switch to Brightline West. We're all very excited about it here, especially me, so I live in California, and I'll get to ride it hopefully soon. How did that idea come to be, and was that a project that Brightline started from scratch, or was that a project that Brightline acquired?
Yeah, so the idea has been around for literally decades, and now our partners in this had actually been pursuing a project to connect Las Vegas to Victorville, California, and had advanced some right-of-way work and advanced some environmental permitting work, and we're challenged by the things that giant projects like this, are challenged by as a sort of small to medium-sized private company. And in 2019, we acquired that company, Desert Express was the name of the company, and Brightline acquired that company. And then subsequent to the acquisition, we made a few adjustments to the program, the most significant of which was expanding the program from Victorville all the way over the Cajon Pass into the LA Basin to connect with the Metrolink system at Rancho Cucamonga. So it really was a way to get the last sort of challenging point of the drive into the train system, and it changed the complexion of what the connection was really all about. So we picked up from those beginnings and expanded the right of way, changed some of the direction for how the right of way was going to work, and importantly completed the environmental permitting process for the entirety of the system last year.
So some of it was already complete when
we stood on the backs of literally 15 years worth of prior effort.
Great. Yeah. Got it at just the right time, it seems like. So what will the final project be like? What will it be like for riders? Describe what the experience will be like.
Yeah, so for those in the room that have ridden Brightline, what you'll see with Brightline West is the next innovation of the version of the same kind of a service delivery platform that we've developed the Brightline brand around. The big differences are all electric trains traveling at in excess of 200 miles an hour. So we recently announced that we've concluded a procurement process, and we've selected the train set. Stay tuned for relatively near-term future announcements about the details of that. But there'll be super cool new built-in America train sets that are traveling 200 miles an hour for the first time in the country. The stations will be, similar in nature to what we've become known for in Florida. They'll be bigger, they'll be better, they'll be the natural next, generation of what we've come to know, and the service platform from top to bottom, from technology on down, will also just be the natural extension of the things that we've built and the things that we've learned about this business in Florida.
Any plans for a party car on the train or slot machines on the train?
Yeah, so there have been a few leaks around about a very special component that we've built into the product there, and we have a product in the train that we have specifically built for the LA Vegas market. That is, it's quite unlike anything that we've ever done in Florida, and I think it's safe to say it's quite unlike anything that's on any other train, today in the world, and it's very much, on target for the unique nature of this marketplace that we're entering into.
Now, you talked about the stations a little bit. Give us some more detail. Do you have plans to develop the area around the stations also, or have others expressed interest in developing the stations in Vegas, Rancho Cucamonga?
Yeah, so for sure, what we learned in Florida was when you install this kind of transportation infrastructure into an urban area, the value generation in the proximate area, as much as 3/4 of a mile away, is dramatic. The development activity that happens around our stations in Florida has been remarkable, to say the least. We owned about 11 acres in downtown Miami, as an example, and we developed 1.5 million or 2 million square feet of real estate in conjunction with our station there. But others developed about 10 million square feet immediately around us, and they were the beneficiaries of the opportunities that created. So in Las Vegas, we purchased a 110-acre site, which is the largest contiguous piece of land on the Las Vegas Strip that's not developed today, and it spans between I-15 and the Las Vegas Strip, and it has access points to 2 on-ramps onto the I-15 highway system. So it's a remarkable piece of property. The rail infrastructure and the station itself is going to take about 20 acres. So we have about 90 acres of development that we will pursue immediately around the station there. So that could be 10 million square feet of development in various forms that will happen, immediately adjacent to the station in Las Vegas. Victor Valley we acquired almost 300 acres in Victor Valley. And you heard some inklings today about some of the future possible connections to Palmdale, the high desert corridor. We think over the long term, Victor Valley actually may turn out to be something in terms of a development opportunity because of the transportation infrastructure that's going to be linked there. So while we have no immediate plans or thoughts about that, we've sort of protected our flank as a company by having about 300 acres. We wish we had more property adjacent to our station in Rancho Cucamonga, but the site that we have is very strategic in terms of its linkage to other transportation systems. And so, we're fortunate to have been able to secure a site for a very large parking and ground transportation system that we would attach to our site and then our station proper, but no real development opportunity for us in Rancho.
I was wondering, you talked about linking to city centers. How are people going to get to the heart of the Strip or downtown LA from these stations? What's the plan there?
Yeah, so there's slightly different answers. In many respects, having a car in Las Vegas is a liability. Most people get there, and if they drove, they park their car someplace, they pay to park it, and they don't see it again until they're ready to depart. So it's not of significant benefit. People use Uber, Lyft, hotel shuttles. They walk. There's such a concentration of primary destinations in Las Vegas within a very, very short distance for one another. There's not a lot of benefit of having your own vehicle available to you when there are simple alternatives like rideshare available to you. And so we think our proximate location to the Strip, we're on the Strip, we're about a mile south of the sign, the famous Strip sign. We're 2 miles south of the Mandalay Hotel, which means that's where today the heart of the resort activity takes place. Whether you're going to a resort hotel or you're going to Allegiant Stadium or you're going to the future baseball arena or you're going to T-Mobile, you're not very far. You'll be able to get there fairly easily by Uber, Lyft, or some other sort of rideshare mechanism. In Rancho, it may be a slightly different story. What we have learned in Florida, people have increasingly used other transportation methods to get to the station, principally rideshare, which is super interesting because when we started in Florida, Uber didn't exist in Florida. So it was never part of the equation when we conceived of Brightline Florida because it didn't exist. So we built parking garages and the normal stuff. More and more people every day are leaving their cars at home and getting to the station by other methods. We think in Rancho there'll be a combination of ground transportation services that exist, shuttles, rideshare, but we're also building a 3,600 car parking garage because we do think a lot of people will still drive to the station. Today, 85% of the people going from Southern California to Las Vegas drive. Some 40 million people a year making that drive. You can't go on the only road that makes that connection, I-15, without driving by the station site in Rancho Cucamonga, literally. I-15 goes right by the station site. And so the same people that would otherwise be driving, it would be an easy thing for them to do to just pull into the parking garage, leave their car in Rancho and get on the train and in just under 2 hours be on the Strip in Las Vegas. So we think that's the attractive proposition that gets them out of their car, takes the traffic off I-15 and puts them on our train.
I wanted to talk about I-15. Why was it decided to go in the I-15 corridor? And was that a benefit to the project, as far as construction goes and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so a big part of our philosophical approach to how these things happen in a profitable way is based on this notion that we learned in Florida that in fact governments have a superpower as it relates to expediting these projects, and it comes from the fact that governments already control corridors that connect the places that people want to go. They're called roads, and typically those roads have capacity in the corridors that have been set aside for them, either for future lanes or, in the case of I-15, for medians. And in our particular case, the idea of putting it principally in the median is an ease of access question for building it, which makes it faster and less expensive to build. But it also effectively winds up being a safer solution because, in effect, what you're building is barrier walls on either end, on either side of the roadways, and you're putting a segregated rail corridor in the middle of that, median, which is behind safety walls. And so 0 grade crossings the entire way. Now, we built some bridges and things to go through overpasses, but no grade crossings. And so at the end of the day, it's a faster, better, safer solution in our view for how you get the infrastructure put in place in an existing transportation corridor.
Great. And how much is it going to cost to build? And where's the money coming from?
So it's not insignificant. It's a $12 billion capital program, and it is by virtue of some of the benefits of the things that have materialized. You've heard a lot about that here today. It is a public-private partnership in so much as we were the beneficiaries of a grant from the federal government of $3 billion. So 25% or so of the project cost is going to be funded through the grant. In return for that, we've committed to a variety of initiatives and benefits that we've built into the program. Things like operating the entire construction program under a project labor agreement, committing to organized labor force for the operations of the project once the construction is built, and a number of other things that are built into the program that have increased the price of the project nominally, but that pricing is offset by the help that the grant has provided. The remainder, the majority of it, the other $9 billion, is a combination of debt and equity that the private company is bringing to the table to fulfill the capital requirements. And importantly, once the capital program is done, we maintain the full responsibility for the operating costs of the system forever, as we have in Florida.
Do you think private-public partnership is the way to get major infrastructure projects built in the U.S., and why or why not?
It's a way. It's an important way. It's not the only way. Unfortunately, there's no one-size-fits-all solution to the problem. There are lots of reasonable connections to be made by train services for different reasons. Some of them can be done in a profitable manner, and some of them maybe not, but have other benefits economically and otherwise that inure from those investments. We focus our energy on those equations that we believe do result in a self-sustaining for-profit enterprise, whereby the return of the capital and on the capital that gets invested by the private sector can be produced by the revenue that gets generated out of the project, whether it's fare box revenue or the ancillary revenues that come from the passengers or other things that are a derivative of the business that we do by selling people tickets every day.
What advice do you have to other major infrastructure projects going on in the U.S. As far as securing funding for the build?
Wow. You've heard a theme in some of the other speakers here today about stamina. Really is the issue, right? These things, they tend to take a long time, and they sometimes go through evolutions, and they change their stripes along the way, and that is very true, right? It's consistent with all it takes is one person saying no issue, right? It really does take irrational optimism to keep these things alive, and a determination, around the end goal that has to supersede what are, at any moment, seemingly, unattainable goals or, untackleable challenges because they come up on a day in and day out. So it's like I like when you're here in Washington D.C. and can be a very inspirational place, and lots of places to look for why you do what you do. And I like the famous quote. You probably all heard this quote, like, we do these things not because they're easy, but because we thought they would be easy.
That's great. Do you anticipate, well, I'm curious, is Brightline in Florida profitable? And do you anticipate Brightline West being profitable?
Yes and yes. We have our business has built rapidly since we launched the Orlando to Miami service, and we're now generating profits off the operation in Florida. So that massive milestone. We recently received an investment grade rating for our operations in Florida, and consequently have refinanced our capital stack there. So great strides are happening every day with the profitability of the business in Florida. And we wouldn't be investing $9 billion of private capital in Brightline West if we weren't highly confident that it's also going to be a profitable business. We actually think it will ramp up faster in Brightline West than it did in Florida for a couple reasons. Number one, Brightline West exists. People know about it. As was evidenced in the hands that got raised in this room. That wasn't the case, right? When we started in Florida, we had to teach people what a train was in our marketplace, and so we don't have to do that as much anymore. And the industry is moving quickly, and we're the beneficiaries of all of that lift for the version 2.0. And it's also true that for the next 3.5 years or so, 40 million people a year are going to be driving by a construction site. And there may be an epithet or two thrown along the way because of the orange cones, on the road. But they will be aware that a train is coming soon, and so we'll get the lift of the awareness for the product, in a way that we didn't have in Florida.
Yeah, great. Okay, big question. How are you going to build it in what feels like to me record time by the LA Olympics in 2028?
Irrational optimism. We effectively built Brightline Florida in the same kind of a time frame, we're just going to do it by waking up every day. We have a plan, we have a schedule, we have an approach. We're prepared for things to happen along the way that we didn't necessarily predict, and we have a team of people, both of our own making, our own company. The management of this process is by our own employees, and we're surrounded by many in this room, some of the best consultants available, in the world to help us, whether engineers or architects or contractors, who are all equally irrationally dedicated to the same goal. That's how you do it.
I was wondering if some contractors from countries that have high-speed rail will be coming in to help, and
yeah, well, I mean, some of the participants are international, but this is going to be this is one of the probably most important end results of this program. It is the beginning of an industry. This is where the next one and the next one and the next one start. And so the expertise, whether it's construction expertise or technological expertise, is really going to be put to the test in this program. It will make the second, third, and fourth one easier. A lot of what we're doing is not easy, but regular way stuff. It's, there's $800 million worth of road work, no different than any other road work that's ever been done. Even the bridge and structural work that we're doing on the civil construction side is relatively normal. We are introducing some technologies from Europe, both train systems and signaling systems that are being deployed for the first time in the country. So in that regard, we have brought the expertise in the United States that has that experience. But a big part of what we're doing here is planting the flag for a U.S.-based industry that we can go beyond, with this project.
do you think, are you confident there'll be enough workers to get the job done already? Have you been able to find people to help?
So we made fairly groundbreaking agreements with a host of organized labor organizations to help us. Two things that organized labor does really, really well is amass workforce and train a workforce. And so for us, that was a pretty straightforward decision to leverage the power of organized labor in our marketplace to help us with this lift.
I was chatting with Andy Byford earlier, and he mentioned part of the construction project that isn't talked about as much is the testing phase, and that can really slow things down and cause delays to getting projects finalized. What's the plan for that phase of the project, and how do you feel about that daunting task?
We think about it not as testing, but as certification, right? They call it fishing, not catching. We like catching. We've done this now. Like we went through this very similar process in Florida recently, in particular with the extension into Orlando. Our trains operate at 130 miles an hour there. And so while not true high speed, it was a relatively novel approval process that we went through with the FRA to test and approve those trains. We are now the beneficiary of a process and a skill set, having gone through that experience. We are also the beneficiary of what has become a very collegial relationship with the FRA. We are both aligned around the same goal, which is to get these things tested and approved so that they are operating safely, but to get to the end, but to actually put these things in service. And so you build upon the previous steps and the things that we've gone through in Florida. Every single one of them is in one way or another an important launching point for how we get version 2.0 in West, done appropriately.
Great. And we heard earlier that Siemens won the contract to build the trains. Why Siemens?
So we just concluded a very long, very competitive procurement process, and I've seen both our friends from Siemens and Alstom in the room today. And it was difficult. It was a difficult choice for us to make. We downscaled from sort of the global providers to these two, 18 months or so, and it has been a back and forth between the two of them. There's no one factor that sort of led to the ultimate decision. There's an aggregate of a number of things, some of which are the old-fashioned ones: price, schedule, those sorts of things. And we landed at the end of the day after a very competitive process on the Siemens trains. I will say that as difficult a decision as it was for us, the process of the procurement made us better. It made the end result better because of the fierce competition between the two of them. They were different technologies at the end of the day, and so we made the difficult choice to go with Siemens. Having said that, what that means is we are introducing a new technology into the United States, DMU technology for the train sets. It is for them the next generation of an existing technology platform that is in existence and in deployment in Europe today. The biggest innovation that comes out of that, and maybe I think this is accurate, is it's going to be what we refer to as a wide body train. So the platform itself is wider than other existing high-speed trains in the world. And that's significant for a number of reasons, one of which is that it lets us deliver what has become brand standards in a number of ways for Brightline with this train set. It means that these are going to be fully ADA compliant trains. You'll be able to push a wheelchair from one end of the train to the other. Because of the width of the train, we can have wider aisles. That has benefits to the customer atmosphere beyond just the wheelchair, but is not an unimportant thing for us, in the nature of it. And it also facilitated us developing this special car that you alluded to that
I was
won't tell
going to
you
say, lots of room for
any more secrets
partying.
about until the
Wait a minute.
appropriate unveiling of the rest of that, which is coming soon.
Nice. And will they be built in California at the Sacramento?
Hold that thought. They will be built in the United States.
Yeah.
They're part of an announcement that's oncoming. They will be manufactured in the United States.
Okay, great. And what lessons have you learned from the train stations in Florida? I'm curious kind of if there's anything different you're doing with the Vegas station, for example.
Yeah, we continue to we're very customer centric. We talk to our customers all the time. We are anthropologists about watching our customers' behavior, and we've learned very clearly to think about our stations as a hospitality venue more than a traditional transportation hall, because that's how people think about their travel experience. And so the introduction of things like our retail experiences and our food and beverage experiences and just the amenities associated with the lounge have become very important to us, and we tweak them all the time, and we pay close attention to people's behavior and try to up the game as best we can on a moment-to-moment basis. I'll tell you, perhaps one of the most important learnings in the station experience in general has to do with luggage. So we do something to a greater degree than most any other train service, I think anywhere actually, which is our the way we allow passengers to carry luggage, and the fact that we also offer checked bags on board trains. And if you think about that, most trains don't have checked bags, and therefore people train their behavior around using a train based on what they can carry and what they can store on by the train. Whereas at Brightline, because they can check bags, they act differently. Well, they carry a lot of bags, as it turns out, and so we're learning every day about how to handle and how to make the operation around baggage simpler, so that it's faster, but also reliable from an operational perspective. And so I was in a conversation with one of our lead designers a little bit earlier today about station design, and we're in a process of rethinking, like from the ground up, how we deal with luggage to make it a step function better than what we're doing today, which is working. But we probably underestimated the importance of luggage on train trips for Americans.
Yeah, I love the check bagged idea. I always try and convince my crew in New York when they travel down here to take a train, but they're like, oh, with all the camera gear, it's too much to carry on. And
The day we turned on the service from Miami to Orlando, it became unbelievably evident. Hardly anybody ever checked a bag between Miami and West Palm Beach. Sometimes somebody have a bike or golf clubs or something like that, but it wasn't that much. The minute the Orlando service turned on, it was a completely different scenario. Big bags, families full of bags, and they were happy to check them and just, have a drink and get on the train, which meant that we needed to up our game in order to be able to offer that service to them. And you don't need to go any further than just go to the Southwest, baggage carousel in the Las Vegas airport and watch what happens.
yeah,
To understand how important that it turns out to be.
super interesting. I like that. What lessons have you learned from California's high-speed rail project?
We are very different animals, right? First of all, they, like we, are each other's biggest cheerleaders. This is a rising tide floats all boats scenario. We need them to succeed. I think they want us to succeed, because it's to the benefit of the entirety of the long-term vision of a national network. We're just very different animals, right? They started with legislative action. They have mandates that control what they do and how they do it. That frankly we're not straddled by. We, as a private company, we have a lot more alacrity with our sort of movements and the decisions that we make and the way that we implement things that they don't have to deal with. But there are lots of things that that we pay attention to, like how are they dealing with their infrastructure builds, and those sorts of things that we pay attention to. We talk about with them frequently, and we try to make sure that what we're doing is informed by like the most recent information that's available just to make us smarter in real time.
Now, one difference, Brightline West is going to have a single track system. I don't know the official name for it, but if you could describe that, I know that is one difference. California has the two tracks.
So, as a private company, we are trying to be as efficient as we can with the capital spend. And so we've designed the system that we're building to be, depending on your point of view, a single track system with strategically located stretches of double track, or a double track system where you've eliminated the unnecessary second track. That's what we've done. And it's because it's not free. And if you're not using it for its entirety, if you don't actually need all of the capacity today to run your business, don't deploy the capital today. And importantly, when you put it in the ground, you also have to maintain it. And that also isn't free. So we've been very efficient in the design of the system to optimize how much stuff we put in the ground that we have to pay for in the first instance, and then we have to maintain on a day in and day out basis. And what we put in the ground allows us to run the system as we've designed it to be. And in the future, we'd love to have an entire double track system from end to end. You'd have the ultimate flexibility if you had that, but it would come at orders of magnitude greater capital investment that if we waited around for that moment to come to pair, it would be another decade's worth of wait before we actually get ourselves into business. And so we've just chosen to be very strategic about every dollar that we spend.
Has this been done elsewhere in the world also?
We've effectively done it in Florida. So the new track that we built from Cocoa into the Orlando airport is exactly the same place. It's double track on both ends and single track in the middle, where trains are not passing based on our schedule. We have the capacity to build the second track someday, but we didn't build it today because we don't need it.
Interesting. Okay. And what other projects is Brightline eyeing around the country? Any other big plans to purchase other plans, perhaps?
So I work for a guy who has big plans in lots of areas. He's always pushing
Is Wes
for the next and the next and the next. No news to report, other than like here's a clue: 200 to 300 miles apart, big cities, lots of existing travel, broken infrastructure systems. That's where a high-speed train will work. So wherever that exists in the United States, like we are interested in. And I will say, in part based on the success in Florida, in part based on the visibility of Brightline West, and in part based on the momentum of the industry in general, our phone rings a lot. Where we don't have to go seeking the ideas as much as we used to. Some of them are now coming to us and saying, how do we initiate a conversation about how this might work, in our neighborhood? So nothing to report, but we're obviously interested in what comes next at the appropriate point in time.
Any concerns for Brightline West if a Republican is back in the White House next year?
Nope. We just had a major event in Las Vegas, which was the groundbreaking for the Brightline West, and it was the bipartisan support that we've generated for the project sort of in full display. You've heard that message here several times. Like, these things won't happen, if they're based on one flavor of politics as sort of initiatives. It really, at the end of the day, it's going to take both, but it's not hard to imagine why things like this are supported on both sides of the aisle, because they do fundamentally good things, right? This isn't a partisan issue. This is an an issue that really sort of lives at the base level of like American ingenuity and the development of economy and a capability that we should be leading the world in.
Great. I want to make sure there's time for questions. Does anyone in the audience have some questions? Right. Yeah. Perhaps over here? Yeah, there we go.
Hi, my name is Michael Schaefer. I am a graduate planning student from Blaustein School, Rutgers Blaustein, New Brunswick. I would like to wonder, has Brightline strongly considered provisions to electrify the Miami to Orlando route for the extensions to Tampa and possibly constructing a new greenfield high-speed line along I-95 from north of Palm Beach to the existing new track that was constructed in Cocoa Beach?
So we built the Florida system, for those that you don't know, on the backbone of the historic Florida East Coast Railroad. It started in 1896. It has been in continuous operation since then. Until Brightline Florida initiated it, had been a freight-only operation since the 1970s when the passenger operation ceased. Because of that, the freight railroad, which is an important, effectively conveyor belt for transportation of goods up and down the east coast of Florida, they operate trains that double stack containers. And because of that, there's an inherent conflict between the freight operation and a catenary system that you'd need to electrify for the passenger trains. And so because of that reason, we never actually considered electrification of the existing right-of-way. Had we tried to build a greenfield system in Florida up the I-95 corridor when we did it, some 10 years ago, it would have been orders of magnitude greater than the $6 billion that we did invest in that system, and we'd probably still be building it. So, these are the choices that you make, right? And so we were able to deliver we consider to be fairly groundbreaking service built on the backbone of something that the company had acquired, which was this existing freight railroad.
Really quickly, is the new line built that was built along 528 and which could be potentially extended to Tampa in the I-4 corridor that was originally proposed for high-speed rail, could that easily be upgraded to, say, 168, 186 miles per hour high-speed electric rail?
Well, that route isn't electrified. Conceptually, I guess it could be, but you'd then be running a different train set on a portion of the corridor, and then you wouldn't really have the connection all the way down to Miami. Now, we do run at 125 miles an hour from Cocoa into the Orlando Airport Station. The Tampa extension, the trains could run between 130 and 150 miles an hour on that portion of the alignment, because that portion of the alignment will also be entirely grade separated and not have any grade crossing. So we could run, a significant portion of the total alignment from Tampa to Miami at speeds in excess of 130 up to about 150 miles an hour. But once we leave onto the existing main line, we're going to be limited to the existing speeds there, 79 to 110 miles an hour.
Okay, right here.
And Andrea Gioricin from Italy. As I showed this morning, we have in Italy with Italo that a big shareholder is coming, MSC, so Mediterranean Shipping Company. So of course, right now, the big investment of Mediterranean Shipping Company in Italo is not depending of intermodality between shipping in Civitavecchia, going on the tourists, maybe going around Italy. But Florida, that is really the capital of cruises, could be interesting to enlarge to that catchment area of the port of Miami and so on to have this kind of intermodality with more and more, not only with the train, but enlarging this.
Yeah, so listen, we have stations in Fort Lauderdale, Miami. We're about 4 blocks away from the port of Miami, and I told you we're working on a station in Brevard County, which is about, I don't know, a mile and a half from what is now the largest cruise terminal in the world, by the way, Port Canaveral. So the three biggest cruise ports in the world are very proximate to each of our stations. We've just now started to develop affiliations directly with the cruise lines. Recently in Florida, we started working with Princess Cruises, where, among other things, we'll check your bags, and they'll show up in your cabin on the Princess Cruise Line. So you give them to us, and the next time you see them, they're in your cabin, on your ship. So that's what's happening. We're integrating with cruise lines. We're beginning integrations with airlines for this intermodality. As a result of these are the things that first you have to exist, and then the world of possibilities start to become real for you.
Right over here.
So I have two questions, one about baggage, the other one about national standards. So you guys talked a lot about making agreements with California High-Speed Rail on train width, on electrification, and on signaling systems, and anticipation of future integration with their network into Los Angeles. If you guys do imagine continuing to expand your networks, you start out with small city pairs, you start expanding, and before you know it, you're integrating with other networks. And if everyone's building trains with, I want my train this width and that width, and I want my catenary this high and that high, then integrating those systems is going to be a lot more difficult than if you have a federal government that sets those national standards that allow everyone to be on the same page. And so if you do happen to share infrastructure with someone, do you feel advocating for those standards to be set is important to your business?
Yeah, so journey of 1,000 miles. Starts with the first step. Right now, there are two players, us and California. We've coordinated around interoperability. We've made sure that the first two links of an ultimate network are compatible with one another. From a technical perspective, we haven't even begun to think about how that would work commercially. Doesn't matter. We'll figure that out at the right point in time. Start with a technological solution that ties the two together, and that creates the breathing room for policies and and evolutions that come next. And now the onus is on whoever's next to follow suit, or for a system of standards to be developed that understands that the first two pieces have already, agreed to a set of standards that they're applying. So, these are pioneering issues, right? When you can wait for all the stars to align and wait forever, or you can take logical, rational, hard decisions and move forward, which is kind of what we do.
And the one last question about baggage is that for many centuries, railroads were famous for having baggage-dedicated cars, and Amtrak today still has baggage cars. So do you think you'll have some of the first, high-speed rail baggage cars that are, dedicated to carrying baggage? Because sometimes you need an entire car for it when people have lots of bags.
We don't have an entire car, but we have nearly an entire car.
Hi.
Other question? Oh, here we go, right in the front.
Hi. Yeah, okay. There you go. So just about labor, specialties, and hiring people and finding people actually in the United States to get that kind of expertise and special expertise for high-speed trains. People are not even educated for that, but we have experience for that. So any kind of project that it could be like a university or any kind of education in that part to invest to have expertise in generational way.
Yeah. So again, we're gonna build on a lot of the experiences that we had in Florida. At the end of the day, there are a few highly specialized areas of expertise that are associated with train operations. Not a ton, but the few that do exist are pretty darn important. Among other things, operating engineers, right? The guy that drives the train or the gal that drives the train in many instances for us. And so ultimately, as a way of ensuring our success, we built an internal training program to make operating engineers from our own employee base. I suspect we will do the same thing for Brightline West. By the way, it is a way for us to, attract a completely new workforce, a young workforce, and create a future again for the industry. We've been very successful with it in Florida. We're very proud of the program that we put together there, and we plan to replicate it for Brightline West as well.
Any other questions from the audience? Back here.
Hi. You talked about the use of technologies from overseas like signaling and rolling stock because they hadn't been used here in America yet. But what is your view on the importance of Buy America and using American labor, manufacturing, engineering, consulting, et cetera?
So Brightline West is a 100% Buy America project. It's 100% American labor, 100% Buy America provisions, top to bottom. By the way, so was Florida. The train sets we effectively did the same thing with the train sets in Florida. All of the infrastructure and buildings were the same, but what are now known in the industry as the venture, coach cars and the Charger locomotives, nobody had them before Brightline Florida, and working with, in this case, Siemens in Sacramento. An entire U.S. supply chain was put together to create those trains, and now we struggle to get more train cars from them because we have to get behind everybody else who's ordering those same things for their systems in the United States. We're anxiously awaiting new coaches because we're capacity constrained in Florida. That plant doubled in size from when we started, and now we have to squeeze our way into the building that we helped build. So,
Any other questions from the audience? Seeing if I see anyone. I have one last question for you. What is keeping you up at night? So what are you most?
Like a baby.
Oh.
2-hour stints.
So there's no concern about, it feels you have a good amount of pressure trying to hit this Olympic deadline, so I wasn't sure if that's something you're fretting about a bit.
Yeah, sure. Again, I work for a guy who's, every time I mention that feeling a little pressure, he reminds me that pressure makes diamonds. So you either accept the challenge or you don't. Like if you give it a moment's break, it'll crush you. So don't give it a break. So I don't know. Like I get as much sleep as I can and put my feet on the floor in the morning and be prepared for 99 problems.
All right. Well, best of luck to you and great to chat with you. Yeah. Thank you, Mike.